one, and
I find it's a good thing to watch early in the morning to get you inspired for the day, Seamus.
yeah, well, I guess my voice has that impact on people, and so yeah, you're not very convincing. So I'm assuming everyone can now see my screen. All right, so
yes,
just going to jump into the database that I actively work out of, which is Integrity New Homes. So Anne was generous enough to send over a job she's been working on, and that I've been I guess giving a few little pointers on and advice on, and areas that we can look at and ways to make things easier. Now I haven't looked at this as of yet. She sent me over some files and I've loaded them all up to the test training folder. I thought it would be probably best for me to look at it with a clean set of eyes with everybody else rather than coming into it with some divine knowledge. So I'm just going to jump into attachments. So I've been loading up into this folder here, which is, as you can see, got the naming convention standard, so it should be available in each of your franchise databases. Just the various files and drawings that people have been sending through to me that we've been then using for pricing in Iprox, so that if you want to copy that to your own database and want to have a crack at doing it yourself, you've got something to reference. So the one that's come through to me is this one here. And if anyone that's sending through something to me for pricing has issues with that file being accessible to the group for whatever reason, client information or whatever the case, definitely let me know so that we can look at doing something else rather than putting it in the public domain as it is. Now, this is one that was sent through to me actually, I think it was this morning or late yesterday. As you can see, it's quite a whopping house. So this one we're going to start from scratch, and but first we'll just jump back to the one that Anne sent through, which would be this Avalon. And what we'll do is we'll copy over her estimate that she started. We'll have a look at what she's done and ways that we could do things differently, or extra things that could be allowed to get the price as hopefully where it needs to be. So as you can see here, we seem to be taking a standard Avalon 25 and stepping it. It must be a sloping block, 1.2 meter split level, and we've got a contour survey here as well. Alright, so we seem to be 36 here, 33 there, so it looks like the site is falling away from the road. So what we'd be doing is dropping it, having some stairs going down, and presumably dropping the roof level and creating, I guess, a bit of a gable effect. When viewed from the rear of the house, you'd kind of see two distinctly separate roof lines and some kind of FC infill between the two, rather than trying to maintain the same ceiling height. Oh, sorry, rather than raising the ceiling height at the rear to try and maintain the same roof line. For this one, we'll try the approach of sticking to standard 24 ceiling and actually separating the roof structure. Oh, the road's on the top, is it? I thought this white bit down the bottom. Oh, so we're going the opposite direction, are we? Good call. Good call. Alright, thank you for that. So we're actually going the opposite direction, so we're going to be looking at a gable from the front. So we're 33 to 36. Ah, okay, so you guys actually have locations dictated to you on and crossovers provided. That's interesting. Alright, so let's scratch everything we said then, and we're going to be going the opposite approach. So we will have the garage and presumably the entry, if we just jump back to the floor plan here, and porch all on one level. Probably also try and pick up that ensuite if possible and put it on the one level, and run a drop edge something like this. Would be probably one way of doing it. A simpler construction method would be to probably play around with this and move the garage hinge door to maybe a cavity slider and move it from here to there, as you can see has been shown. And probably also the linen too, to an extent. If I was redrawing this for construction, or if I was asking it to be redrawn, I'd probably take more of the approach of just trying to square that straight off, given that the walls are almost 100% in line, if not entirely in line, and just running one straight through the guts and starting the stairs here, and actually, you know, playing around with that walk-in robe and maybe stealing some of it for the linen. But we'll work with what we've got. So that's actually the bottom of the stairs as it climbs up. So the drop edge itself would actually, as drawn, follow this section here and probably wrap around marginally. So we'll just minimize that for a moment. Alright, so we're just going to jump into Iprox. And as you can see, this is the one we worked on last week, the question mark, question mark, question mark design. Once again, we have the question mark design. Alright, so bear with me one moment. So we're just going to make a copy of another job. So we go to select Iprox, copy from another job, and standard space hyphen space. Now I'm relatively certain it started with an S, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe you can correct me, Anne. I've got my emails closed. Bell, that's the one. Good call. Alright, so we've got this one here. So we're just going to hit copy. And so we've now brought over a copy of the estimate that Anne was working on. As you can see, we've it looks like she's copied this from either a standard Avalon or a standard something else from our list. This here is our preferred, I guess, standard information that would go on it. So we just adjust the expiry date as per usual. Now you'll see here the consent authority is shown without a name. Now that is because the consent authority set in Anne's database is not in mine. We obviously she would have a different consent authority and different business contact assigned. So what it's done is it's essentially blanked itself out and just chosen a default effectively. So I'm just going to select that and just change it to Coffs Harbour, just so that it works on my side. And then when it's complete and Anne were to copy it back to her own, she would have to adjust it once again back to her settings. So we've got assumed M, assumed N2. They're the standard classifications and the moderate corrosion zone classifications that are allowed for in our base price. If they were to vary from that in any way, that we would charge that as separate line items. As you can see, we're at the most up-to-date price list. And now we're just going to double check these values here, which we do in every single instance. 182.2, 36.17. Kitchen is shown as 6 on plan. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. If I just get some measurements now, we obviously want to double check the scale before we start making any assumptions. So this scale, whilst it's shown as being originally 1 to 100, during the printing and scanning back in procedure, we've ended up with a plan that's not quite to scale. So what we need to do is set a custom scale. So we'd go Scale, Calibrate Measurement. Just going to tick that, and then what you do is you choose two areas that are known values as precisely as you possibly can, and then you tell it exactly what you see it to be. So this would be 4 meters. So that 38.9 millimeters that I'm seeing is actually 4 meters. And hit OK. And now if we come back to this distance tool, you'll see it's retained that information. And if we were to take one of these measurements, we should get a pretty close representation of what we're seeing here, hopefully. So we've got 3 meters, and we've got 3 meters and 20 millimeters, which is effectively just the thickness of the plasterboard either side anyway. So that means our scale is pretty useful. So we've got 3 meters and 3 meters, which is where we're getting the 6 meters here. Now, the cabinet-made bench can be included in the kitchen rate, or alternatively can be shown as a separate line item in Iprox in the job workup, depending on what you anticipate that cabinet-made bench to be made out of. Now, if you include it in the Iprox main page section, which is this just here, you're effectively allowing for it to be full cabinetry, laminate top, bench underneath the doors, the whole shebang, as if it was an extension of the kitchen. Now, in many instances, that's not what would go in one of these. So I tend to price it as a separate line item because our standard cabinet-made bench is just nothing more than just a laminate top effectively hanging on a couple of aluminium angles fixed to a wall. And it's usually nothing more than just an appliance bench. Now, there's a rate in Iprox for that. Now, what you will see here is many items in this job will show as bold. Now, that's because they are custom items which are housed in Ian's database. They're not in mine. So what it's doing is it's notifying me that these items are different, or that the dollar value associated is different from what is shown in the master price list. So my apologies, Anne. I'm going to be replacing your items with mine just for this purpose, just so that you know, it looks the same as if I was doing it as a standard effectively.
No, do you need to demonstrate how Anne got them from our master price list into their own franchise one?
The copy feature?
Yeah.
Because many of these would be potentially just made from scratch, effectively your own. So there's two options you can do it. One would be to press the blue button here, and it pops up a little window with the top category and also the subcategory. You would write in whatever you're trying to achieve or whatever you're providing. You choose the file, the unit type, and then you would place a price. And once you hit OK, because you, well, aside from a few select employees of our business that have access to the master price list, everybody else, when you create an item, the item gets created in your own personal database, which will appear when you tick this little box here. So because my user account is Integrity New Homes, which is the master price list that is accessible to everybody else's, all these items show as green in mine, which is notifying me or signifying to me that these are my items in my database. These items in yours, on the other hand, I believe will show as white because they will be referred to as items from another database. And the items that you have manually created will appear as green, signifying that they belong to you. And if you wish to hide our items, you would just tick this box and it would effectively show you only yours. Alright, so
You said there was two ways of doing it. You said the first one. Yeah.
And the second is to right-click on a pre-existing item that's been provided that's either appropriate or even if it's not, it doesn't really matter. It's just to right-click and go copy, and it'll take an exact copy of the one which is in the master price list that we've created and made accessible for you all. And you can adjust the item name, the cost, description, category, subcategory to whatever you like. Once you hit OK, it will create a duplicate. So if I was to just say do internal stairs, right click, copy, and change that one to 6600 and hit OK, you'll see a second one has appeared also green because it's been recreated in my database. I'm just going to delete that one out just so there's no confusion. Alright, so many of these items here have been custom created in Anne's database, or copied items from our database at one point in time and then had their values adjusted to reflect their costs in their area. I mean, you can't always rely on your area loading. Just because something costs $100 in costs doesn't mean that it's going to cost, say, $90 in Sydney or $110 in Sydney. Well, we do a lot of the time rely on area loading as a general indication of cost or an allowance for cost that, you know, based upon the market. That may apply to the base price quite effectively, but there may just be one thing in your particular area which is very, very cheap, and you don't want to be charging too much for it and making yourself uncompetitive, or alternatively something that we're able to purchase here in, say, Coffs Harbour, or, you know, in the master price list quite effectively that costs you phenomenally more in your market. So I'm just going to go through and do a little bit of tidy up on some of these. So as you can see, we've got one builder's range, double PowerPoint and conduit. That's showing us the exact same item, excludes fixed wireless, so that's perfect. That's one of our standard items. It hasn't been flagged in bold. So if you bear with me a moment, I'm just going to calc bar and do incomplete only. As I said, I always like to work in the incomplete only area, and then I mark them as complete to make them disappear. So we right click and mark complete, and now that's gone. Now we've got one here, one builder's range 2,000 litre nominal slimline rainwater tank. So if I just type in slimline, you'll see we've got one here, and it's at far lesser cost than the one which is detailed in Anne's database. Yes. The concrete base slab, I just moved the price down on it just the other week. We were charging $120 a square metre for it, which was just not reflective of the cost in any way, shape or form. It was essentially set originally to match the external concreting cost, but more often than not we're pouring them in situ with the house, and so it's effectively just overflow or waste of the house, or alternatively they're getting poured as, you know, small little pads separate from the house but aren't costing anywhere near that $120. So I've moved that rate down to $80. Oh, for some reason it's still showing us bold, so we'll just double check that. So that means that item there is also not in my database. It is a copy which is housed in theirs. Now, as we can see here, our standard note is that the tank is as per plan. No, actually it's not. Good. I was going to say, if it did say as per plan, such as this rainwater tank slab, then what we'd want to do is remove that, because clearly it's not on the plans. It's something that we're proposing to provide that's not there. So just select those and go mark complete. Alright, now one clear glazed side light, that's definitely the case, perfect. Alright, so we've got N25 coloured finish external concrete to driveway. So that would be an item that's not in our database. At $131. So if I was to say go to colour, actually whilst you're there, Anne, What type of finish is that? Is that a full depth color, i.e. the color is going into the mix and is then being sealed, or is it a rolled on finish, or stenciled finish? What kind of finish is that? Rolled finish. Oh, okay. All right, and that has a sealer put on top. Yeah, okay, all right. So we have an equivalent item in our database here. So if I just go down to external concrete, wherever it is, doors, all right. So we have sealed roll-on color external concrete. So what we do is, rather than having, say, 20 variants of one item, we try to maintain a core item and then provide further upgrades from that as a separate line item. So our equivalent would be this plain finish and then this extra over plus plain finish. So the driveway we actually don't have details on. So what we would do is we wouldn't write as per plan, we would write up to 54 meters squared. Now that's allowing only for the topping, effectively, the sealed finish on top. And if I was to say N25, see, the other option would be just to delete that. Right, plain finish concrete to drive, entry porch and al fresco. Up to calc. Wow, that's a big calculator. Bear with me, everyone. 54 plus 22.3, which would be the addition of the porch and al fresco. Okay, alright, I'm actually going to take a step back and try a different approach here, which would be the way that it would appear if it was in our database. So we've got builder's range plain finished concrete. So we tend not to state N25 to the alfresco, because in many instances the alfresco may be poured in situ and our house slabs aren't N25 concrete, and so you're kind of backing yourself into a potential liability issue there by stating it is N25. So we would keep the alfresco separate, and we'd be able to say as per plan, because the alfresco and the concrete associated, it's very clear. So we'd write 17.8. So that covers off our alfresco. If I just go N25. Now, there's no hard set rule effectively to these concrete areas that range between small, medium and large. I've generally taken the approach, and nobody's corrected me at any stage, that I consider 0 to 49 to be small, 50 to 99 to be medium, and 100 plus to be greater, or to be called large. Now, that's just my own internal reasoning. Like I said, there is no hard set rule about it. It's more just an indication that obviously as areas go up, the price associated should come down. So given this is 54 square meters, we'll put in the medium one based upon my reasoning, whether flawed or not, and we'd go up to 54 meters squared. And then we would get rid of that one there. So we'd have the plain finish to the drive, porch and path, and then we would go to drive, porch and path. Then the alfresco would be retained as plain finish. Alright, now the next one we've got a colour bond roof. Now I don't have any elevations on this one, so I'm just going to go colour bond. Now we've got this promotion here for the colour bond at $9 a square metre. And then we have an extra over for 60mm thick wool blanket. And we would apply that to the entire floor area because it's single level with roof over. So we'd go 240.6 and 240.6. What else have we got? So no allowance for any clothesline, beautiful. Hard or soft landscaping. Now we are making allowance for, except for concrete to drive, porch, path, and alfresco. Just there's no confusion there about us potentially not giving them concrete. No letterbox, no perimeter fencing or gates, no allowance for any retaining walls. Right, provide builder's range perimeter physical termite barrier, so that's shown in bold, so that's either an item that's been deleted at some point or alternatively been copied over and doesn't reside in our database. So the product we use is the Trithor perimeter physical termite barrier system. You'll see I've been a little more just recently I did some work on these items and made them a little bit clearer about the actual products we were providing. That way if clients want to do their research into the one that's most appropriate for them and the warranty system associated, they can do so. Now Trithor is the physical termite barrier system offered by 1300 Termite, aka Enviropest, aka Flick Anti-Simics, who have provided us a national rate for supply and install of both collars and barrier systems, whether they're reticulated or your traditional one that goes into your brickwork. And the rates associated are pretty attractive. So we've got 70.32 external perimeter, 70.32, which is exactly what we want. Alright, so just jump down a little bit and we'll come back to the more finicky items. So as I was saying before, the pantry I would tend to treat separately by putting 6 into here as per the plan, and then actually treating the pantry as a separate line item. Now there's one here for an upgrade to a cabinet-made appliance bench. In builder's range, laminate to pantry as per plan, and you'll see the linear meter rate also makes allowance for upgrading to cabinet-made melamine pantry shelving rather than just carpenter-made. Now we wouldn't go the whole way around. The rate for that bench is high enough to offset the additional cost with then getting these shelves done, so we'd only need to put in this 1.22. And mark complete, and then get rid of that one because it's a duplicate of the one I just did. Now this is just our standard notes, so we'll just mark those off and get them out of the list so we've got a bit more manageable. Alright, now we seem to have a difference in standard inclusions between the companies, so I've got to be mindful here when I apply our standard inclusions. It may create complications for the franchisee. I guess on the outset we've got a different garage door supplier, different door furniture, Oh, no, 90mm thick stud walls throughout internally. That's interesting. We use the 55mm cove cornice. We use a different wall hung vanity. So I'm just going to leave this the way it is, just because I don't want to break anything there or create any complications. Oh, okay, alright, cool. What about door furniture and garage doors? You coming on board? And then these are just also our standard notes that have come over from the standard that was copied relating to the wind rating, geotechnical, and also the no allowance of peering. Okay, well that's good to know, Anne. The note regarding no allowance for exporting and removal of spoil from site. Now this is a custom note by the looks of it. Just gonna, whereas this is the one that we have in our standard, which seems to be somewhat of an amalgamation of the two. Now, shower with no hob and or step down to bathroom and ensuite as per plan. Now we're anticipating, or we're going to be pricing this as a stepped concrete slab. Now, providing wet area step downs or shower step downs in concrete's negligible costs, so that's perfect. Builder's executive range main floor tiles as per plan. Wow, that's a high rate. And I don't know what these items are. They're obviously custom floor coverings items. Ah, timber look. Nice. So I actually did have an item, but maybe that was like one I created for a specific job. There's one called the Red Range, which is just some phenomenally expensive tile that one of our clients used. I think I created it on that job and didn't bring it over to the standard just because there was some big disparity in pricing. But yep. Alright, so floor coverings. Now I don't have a floor coverings plan with me, but I'm assuming these came across from a floor coverings plan that was part of this drafting set. So I'm just going to go mark complete. One wet area niche per bathroom. So I'm probably just going to, and as you can see, that's a different value, so this is a different item. Just go one wet area niche. So we charge them out at $350 fixed rate. It's actually also that price in our designer inclusions upgrade document, which is why we now have this tick box here for the enable area loading so that you can disable it. That's going to be very, very important should you be advertising upgrade prices or product prices that you then disable the area loading on that item so that you don't suddenly end up with a varied rate depending on the consent authority. So all the items which appear in our designer inclusions upgrade document all have this area loading item unticked so that we have uniform pricing across the board. Bathroom and ensuite as per plan. 2 in total. Alright, temporary fencing, 100 linear meters seems generally appropriate. Looking at the size of the block, 30, 60, 75, 90, 100 meters, that sounds sweet. Alright, now M class. Now I haven't gotten around to updating all the standards yet, it's still a work in progress, but as I said, I think a week or so ago, we've now increased our allowance in the base price for additional earthworks, so we're now allowing for that's the wrong item. Now allowing for 1 meter of fall across the site versus our previous allowance of say 600 mil, which was 300 mil fall and 300 mil cut and fill. So that means you don't need to charge out as much earthworks allowance anymore as you once were. Now, given that there is such, what is that? It's 33.5 to 36. So they've got kind of 2.5 meters fall across there. So 100 cube does definitely sound appropriate. There's a contingency. That's fine. Now these items here are all referred to as Addendum A terms and conditions. Now this is actually a sales estimate document, so it's not technically an Addendum A. It's not it's not an addendum to anything at this point in time. So I guess if you're using these notes on general sales tools, it might be worthwhile editing them and moving them to another category, such as the general notes or something of that nature. Or alternatively just creating simpler copies of them where they're probably less lengthy and scary to potential clients. And we've already got the note in the other one regarding the assumed M-class site classification. This note here is stating that a provisional sum has been allowed for the excavation of rock, which I don't think I saw. So, and does this site likely have rock? Is that why this item's in here? Or has that just been added by accident? Oh, okay. That's interesting. I'll have to have a look at that, whatever job that is, because it looks like it's been added by accident somehow. Alright, so additional cavity sliders, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, we've made it a little bit clearer in the master price list, the standard allowances. So, and if we type in additional, you'll see that it now clearly states the number that are allowed. So I'm just going to wipe out that old item there, 'cause it's got a different naming convention, and we'll count up the entry doors, whether they're hinged or sliding, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would be an additional 2. Now cavity sliders would be the same. 1 cavity slider, 2 cavity sliders, 3 and 4 cavity sliders, which would be, yes, an additional 2. Now we also adjusted the hips and valleys item. Where's the rumpus? Oh, good call. You didn't see it on your own one though, did you? Good call. Alright, so I'm just going to add this extra hips and valleys item in to replace the old one, the old naming convention. And we'll just count these up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, which would be an additional 9, which is 100% correct. Now, builder's range standard 2A switch. Now, I don't have a copy of an electrical plan, so I'm just going to note allowance here. 6 for a house of that home is pretty appropriate. You'd probably have 1 here and 1 coming up there. There's a couple of halls going on, so I think that's definitely appropriate. Alright, so we got brick lintel to garage door spans over 4 meters. Now, I don't have any elevations, so I don't know what ceiling height we've got. Let me see if I can find this job, this original design. Where are we? Design library. Okay, alright. Avalon 25. Apparently there's nothing other than the standard. So hopefully this is the standard house. It does definitely look much the same, which is good. Alright. So, was it say 2700? Was that the ceiling height? Alright, so we'll have to make some allowance there. And we would apply that to the entire area that's got raised ceilings. Now, without elevations and without divine knowledge, I can only assume it's the whole lot. Once again, we would remove the notation as per plan. So then yes, this brick lintel to garage door span would definitely be appropriate. Energy report, that's a standard note. One builder's range 470 by 470 face brick pier. So we've got another item here. So it looks like the value's just been increased for the additional brickwork, and the notation as per plan was taken off, which we can add back on because it is actually shown as a brick pier. Ooh, where's that other gyro gone? Oh, actually no, it's 350. Geez, Anne, you're all over it, aren't you? And then we've got our two rendered and painted face brick piers to entry porch. Now, once again, the elevations don't necessarily detail them as being rendered, so that's a good call to take that notation off. Just going to get rid of that item. Now, exposed slab drop edge beam. So if I just go here, so is this a custom item that you've created, or one that we had and then we've deleted? Oh, you have. Okay. Were you planning on doing that in concrete? To form up something of that height is really, wow. Cool. Alright. As you can see, I've put a note here in the item that's in ours that's noted nearly impossible to form beyond 1100. Our concreters usually bow out at say 600. To get them to do a meter is usually pushing it. Anything beyond that, we usually end up going to block work and forming separately. But if Anne's concreter can do it, then Anne's concreter can do it. So the next thing we would do is jump back here. So we've got a length here of about 14.96. So if we were to step it through there, that would probably be the most appropriate way of doing it. It might wrap around a little bit towards this direction. So if we allowed, say, 16, N must be allowing for it to come back a bit further. Well, if that's the garage location there, shouldn't need to wrap around too much further. Looking at that contour, we should miss, that should almost go dead on flat, so I wouldn't worry too much about wrapping it around. I'd probably back it off to probably about 16 just to give yourself a little bit of play there. Alright, then we've got one plasterboard niche to entry. Might just swap to the easier to read plans. So that's actually, it's detailed as a recess, so we might just use the recess item. Just so it follows the convention. Plasterboard bulkhead and beam. Now these items are shown in bold, which gives me the impression that they're a different rate or have been copied over. So we have that cutting through that pantry there. It's probably not necessarily required to charge out that bulkhead and beam through there. So what we've done is we've picked up the whole external perimeter, which has made allowance for the beam itself. Now, because we're dropping the whole height to the pantry, charging out a bulkhead when you're actually just dropping the whole thing's probably just overkill. So I wouldn't worry about adding that length. You'd note it as being there, but you wouldn't actually worry about putting a value against it, given you're dropping the whole ceiling there, and you can charge the dropped ceiling rate for that. So you go dropped ceiling to kitchen and pantry. And then we just note this to the pantry, but effectively, you know, we put no value against it, so it would just show as being included. Now we've got the pantry area of 2.73. Now I'm fortunate I actually brought a calculator to my desk this time. So we've got 2.73 by 1.22. And then we've got the kitchen bench, which was 3 by 0.8 being our standard bench top, 200 overhang, which is an overall area of 5.73. So mark that one off. We can get rid of that. Plaster bulkhead. To media. Now the media was 4.02 times by, sorry, we're doing linear meters here, aren't we? So I'll just pick up the perimeter tool and go back to hers, and area tool will be easier because it'll automatically snap back. Now I think the fairest way to do it is measure center line, the same way we do with our kitchens, which is 14. Alright, so when you're doing a split house, you need to allow, obviously, not only for the split itself, but for the, I guess, the general inconvenience or cost associated, delays in construction, and not everything can be quantified as simply as a line item. So we've got this item here as a split level percentage of the base price for every 200 millimeters of split. It's very, very useful when you're coming across jobs like these where there's a bit of unknown. You could allow, say, an 800 drop and it could end up blowing out to a meter. So we have got this item here. I use it in 99% of jobs. So in this instance here, we've Ian's allowed for 6 lots of 200 mil, which is obviously a 1.2 meter overall step, and 1% would be the value that goes into the price. So we'll adjust everything else, and then that'll give us our final price that we can then put into here. Alright, actually no, I don't want to stuff with that, because my base price will be different to what Anne's displayed, because I changed the consent authority when I copied the job over. So I'll just leave that as it is, and Anne can check it when she copies it back, just so I don't break anything or yeah, make a job wrong. Alright, now as I was saying when we started the training, we're effectively stepping this house right through the guts, so we're going to be keeping the garage and bed 1 on the low level at the top, I think it was from memory, and then the site is climbing up. So this section here is, say 33 RL. By the time we get to here, we're about 35, 33, 34 and a half. So what we need to do is make allowance for the roof line, because effectively it's going to be, this roof is going to be meeting here and then starting again above it effectively. So you'll be creating a gable not dissimilar from, I'll just load this job up here for one moment, and I'll give an example of the way it's going to look from the street. When it responds. Oh, sorry, wrong job. Always get the two mixed up. Knowing our luck, it's not enough of a step that we actually can't see it. But effectively, what you're going to have is something like this going on, and that there is going to be a gable, or an FC lined gable with a distinct height difference between the two, and this roof line at the rear, if this section here was the front, will actually end up being all the way up here, and that will be all gable. And I just remembered the job we actually did it on a moment ago, which was something not dissimilar. The people who live over the road from me. Now this is the opposite approach, but that's effectively what you're going to be seeing. So in this one, the side is falling away. In our instance, it's going to be going the other way. So you'd imagine this was the front, and that's what you're going to be looking at when you're looking from the street. So what we need to allow for is the gable rate and any associated additional hips or valleys that may create. Now, we're quite lucky in that this here is lining up almost perfectly with the step, and if we were actually able to readjust this linen and walk-in robe and move this linen onto the lower section, move these stairs forward and straighten up that, we'd actually be able to take a bit of money out of the drop edge, make it a lot easier to form up, and would potentially also work out better for the roof line as well. We'd get that lower level, the wall frame on this on the other side, and we'd probably get away without creating any additional hips and valleys. What we do have to do is make an allowance for that gable, which should be this item here. Now this roof line and this house design works really, really effectively as a step. If you suddenly had the roof cutting across here and wasn't meeting where we're proposing to step, then you'd maybe have to straighten that out and start the roof line again, or try and center this a little bit better. But this design is going to work really, really effectively. So render and paint, and that's really all you've kind of got to allow for. Once you've allowed for the drop edge itself, whether it be concrete formed or block work, like I said, when we're getting to these heights, our concreters are a little bit wary and are usually going to the separate block work. It's really just double checking your roof line implications, having a look at the length of your drop edge, your RLs, and what works effectively. And a lot of the time, that's either best done by getting a contour survey or by getting out on site and taking a few levels, taking a few photos, and just trying to visualize it, pacing out the length of your house, things like that. So we got extra linen or store. So if we just go back and type in linen. So we have one little linen here and one large one there. I always charge out the smaller of the two, which should be this one here, which is 1.33. Unless there's another one somewhere else, or I'm reading that dimension wrong. No, I'm not. 1.33. There's a few other little things here that we could charge out that we'd have to make allowance for. These feature thickenings, these stacking doors. So we have a 21 by 30 and a second 21. Yes, so the alfresco beams are included in the base price, provided that they're standard laminated beams or standard LVLs. So they're allowed for in the undercover rate for the alfresco that goes into this field here. So by putting the area of the alfresco in, you've made allowance for the roof structure associated. It's only these internal beams that require plasterboard setting effectively that create additional cost. So if we were to go to, say, this 3100 stacker, and we'd put 2 in and then change that to, say, 3 meters, just so it reflects the plans. And one would be to the dining and one would be to the rumpus. So we'd go to dining and rumpus as per plan, 2 in total. We've also got a cabinet-made laundry bench. I can't see it's been made allowed for. What else have we got? Let's go to the easier to read plan. Got a bunch of awnings here, which I think have been allowed for. We've got these louvers here. Got this computer nook and the bulkhead that's running all the way over here. Which would be this one here. So you'd put in the length of that there. We've got that one there, which would be to the computer nook. We've got this 1900 high tiled wall. Which would be this one here. To make the rate a little bit more expensive. Change that to 1900. Now we've also got this this blade wall or pier or whatever you want to call it that needs to be made allowed for. Now the plans here show this to be a heat pump, so if that's not what's being provided, you'd have to be wary when putting these plans up on the internet, and you'd want to add an exclusion to the estimate by typing in excluded. And there's an item here that you can bring across, and you'll just change this to say the builder supplied plans, and you would adjust that to state something along the lines of heat pump hot water system has been substituted with Rheem Metro Plus 24 litre instantaneous gas hot water system, something to that effect. The other item is the garage set down. Now this garage is shown on the plan as having a set down, which means you're 70mm lower, which is beneficial should you drive in with a wet car or you're planning on flooding a garage. They actually cost money to do because you got to order a different set of pods, which means you're suddenly increasing your wastage factor, because instead of just working on one, actually you're doing those as standard. Oh yeah. So we once upon a time did those as standard, but we found that it created complications with our standard visual termite barrier system. And if we wanted to retain the set down, we had to actually put in a physical termite barrier in every single instance so that we weren't voiding the visual inspection. And the second thing was it was actually costing us money to do, because, as I was saying, instead of just being able to buy, having an area of 200 square meters with the same size waffle and working on a standard wastage factor, they had to increase the wastage factor because you had to order a different height pod, or alternatively you had to do additional earthworks and set them down lower. So we moved away from those as our standard. We've also got a cabinet made vanity here. I know our vanities don't come with double bowls, so that would be another item. So I just add that one there, and the additional basin. These are just little things that I'm just kind of running through before we kind of save the job, given that we're kind of running over time. So we've got the media detail there. So the rate, I would probably in that instance just go media. So there's a rate there. Not really, it's appropriate. So the item you could use would be the bulkhead one, and then just adjust that to say provide plaster feature to media as per plan, or something to that effect. And that's about it. There's a custom glazed louver window there, so you'd want to allow for the custom glazing or custom window, as well as the louver, which I believe has already been allowed. So I'm just going to save this, and we'll jump back into this next week, and I'm sure between now and then Anne will copy it out and finish it on her side, and we'll finish this job next week pretty quickly, and then we'll move on to that double story house. Not a worry. So does anyone have any questions? As I said, this has been hopefully recorded. I'm just double checking now. Most certainly has. And I'll work on getting those YouTube login details and getting this sent out to everyone who wishes to see it. Any
Thanks,
comment?
Shane.
No, too easy. All right, not a worries. Everyone enjoy their evening, and we'll reconvene.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.